This video is sponsored by Tabletop Ready Miniatures. Get your favorite minis at a discounted price by visiting tabletopreadyminiatures.com. Link in the description below. Hey Wargamers, Tau recently won the Nova Open, which is a pretty big deal considering the Nova Open is a huge GT, and also that Tau haven't been placing quite that high recently. So today I want to pick apart that list, look at why it works, and talk a little bit about some of the choices that were made in that list design. Before we do that though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead, hit subscribe, that way you won't miss any of my upcoming content. A couple disclaimers before we get into the actual list though. One is that there were multiple versions of this list going around the internet. They all differed in very slight ways, and I think I have the right one pieced together here based on what made sense and what I saw on stream and what actually added up to be the right number of points. But if you see something that's different, that's why. There's just multiple versions. I think I have the right one. The winner, Richard Siegler, if you see this, please correct me in the comments if I have the wrong list. But overall, what we're talking about is consistent across all those different versions, the same strengths, weaknesses, all that sort of thing. Additionally, this is, of course, in the Nova format, which means that there are certain things that the list will do better in that format compared to, just book missions or things like that. And again, we'll talk about what those things are in a moment, but it's important to keep in mind, yes, this is using Nova missions, which you would expect given it was the Nova GT. So what was the list? Well, certainly from a structural perspective at least, it was very unconventional. It had 6 CP only. It didn't have a bounty of CP that we often see associated with conventional Tau lists, certainly lists that I produce. Focus more on having at least 1 battalion. This had 3 detachments, all that gave 1 CP. It had a Vanguard, an Outrider, and a Supreme Command detachment, and spread across that it had just the cream of the crop of units that really made this a punchy list. So, spread across those 3 detachments, we had 3 Enforcer Commanders, each of them with 3 Cyclic Ion Blasters and Advanced Targeting System. We had 3 Cadre Fireblades, each with 2 Shield Drones. We have Ethereal with 2 Shield Drones. We have Dark Strider. We also have 3 Riptides with Heavy Burst Cannon, Advanced Targeting System, Velocity Tracker, and Smart Missile Systems. And then for troops, we have just 1 unit of Fire Warriors with 2 Shield Drones. Additionally, we have 2 Pathfinder units. Each of those are packed with drones. It has a Recon drone, a Grav Inhibitor drone, and a Pulse Accelerator drone. But wait, there's more. 2 Shield Drones as well. And then finally, to wrap it all together, we have 2 units of 6 Shield Drones and a unit of 5 Shield Drones. So altogether, a bounty of drones. Essentially, this list functions as a better version of the 8. You have your core damage dealers being the Cyclic Ion Blaster Commanders and the Heavy Burst Cannon Riptides, and everyone else is there to support them and facilitate their success, and survival notably. One of the key parts of this is the drones. Now, normally I would take just a few tactical drone units as my main drone battery, but here we have that plus a sprinkling of other drones. Those drones are here to do 3 main things. One is, of course, savior protocols. They're there to intercept wounds for commanders and riptides, but they're also there to do 2 other things. One is that they are going to be, basically making it impossible to shoot those commanders. They are going to be screening for those commanders, making it so you can't shoot them, and you have to go through all of these drones before you can reach the commanders. And then, of course, after you go through the drones, you probably have to go through the riptides too. So lots of screening for your commanders is essential, and that's one of the reasons why the 8 can be so challenging to play against, is because you have all of these tiny units of drones that you just, you can't quite line up the firepower to get rid of optimally. That is a huge pain in the butt for your opponent, and that is one of the reasons why having all these small units of drones works for this list. The other thing is that they soak up a lot of board space, right? They keep enemies out of areas that you don't want them to be in, and because you have 2 units or 2 models in a unit, you can do that pretty freely. You don't have to worry about dedicating a whole big unit of drones somewhere else where they don't really want to be. You can keep them here, keep them there. It doesn't really matter because there are just so many drones. You can play pretty fast and loose with them. So having that combination of the ability to do saber protocols, be able to screen, and be able to soak up board space is really important to how this list functions. And that is why you see so many of these 2-man units of drones, is for that reason. They are not something that I would normally think to do, but if you take this many of them, I think it totally works. And obviously it did. The guy won, the GT. One of the things that I think makes those drones work really well in this list is because it is in the Nova format. And that means that the number of points that you can get from killing things is constrained by the number of turns. So if someone kills half of these units of drones in turn 1, it doesn't do them much better than killing just a few of them. So overall, you actually target saturate your opponent with the number of drone units that they can kill early on in the game, and therefore they can't actually get that many points from picking up these 2-man units. There's so many of them that you actually exhaust their opportunities for getting points from them early on in the game, which is pretty sneaky if you ask me. Now let's look at each of these units in sequence and figure out what is so good about them. So let's start with the Ethereal. Well, if you watch my most recent 2019 update video, you understand why Ethereals are so good and why they're important in this type of list. There's lots of drones, and you need the Ethereal's leadership to make those drones survive if they're not, just killed outright. So having the Ethereal in this list is important, particularly for the next set of units, for having these 5- and 6-man unit of shield drones. These shield drones they're basically to do two things. One, of course, is to do shield droney things for the riptides and commanders, but also because they are such large units, you can string them out and soak up a lot of space. So they serve two roles. One is denial and the other is protection. And even though, 5 and 6 are not very large units, having the Ethereal nearby allows you to mitigate the risk of losing something due to morale. And that's important in a list that's focused on using shield drones to keep your battle suits alive. You want them to be there for the suits, not to lose them to morale. So the Ethereal actually is pretty important here for that reason. Additionally, the Ethereal is able to give the Riptides and Commanders a Feel No Pain buff that's going to be useful in cases where you run out of shield drones, or they Nova charge or take a wound otherwise. So this inclusion is important, but kind of subtle, right? Like, you don't necessarily think, oh, I absolutely need an Ethereal, but it is really important in this list for those reasons. It shouldn't be a big surprise that there are shield drones in this list. There are shield drones in every competitive Tau list, and for good reason. They're awesome. So, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about why these are in here, but the fact that you saturate just with 3 units of drones right off the bat, you have 17 drones just in those 3 units, is remarkable, right? We have a full amount of drones that we would normally take in a list like this, just based off of our tactical drone units, and yet there's still a ton of other drones in the list. So that's worth noting, is that there are just literally a ton of drones. Next up, we have 3 Cotter Fireblades, each with 2 shield drones. Again, those shield drones are there to be your flexible screeners, blockers, Savior Protocol units that make this list work as a better version of the 8. But on top of that, you have those Cotter Fireblades that themselves are really the backbone of making the rest of the list function, because they have those 2-up marker lights. Those marker lights are going to really allow you to make some of the choices that we're talking about later in the list without penalty, and also are going to be a huge boon to you when facing armies that have -1, -2 to hit. So having those guys there as opposed to Pathfinders or even Firesight Marksmen is going to be really valuable. We're not really using them for what I like to use them for typically, and that is volley fire. There's only a few units that could actually benefit from that, and so that's a secondary benefit to this unit, but not really the primary goal of including them. We use volley fire for Pathfinders and for the 1 unit of strike teams, but even then it's a little hit or miss. It's more of an opportunistic thing, I think, in terms of using volley fire. We're primarily taking these guys for marker lights. One of those Fireblades also has a PureTide Engram Neurochip, which is going to be essential considering we only have 6 CP. Having the PureTide Engram Neurochip allows you to recoup command points, and that's going to make a big difference when we are on such a tight budget. Next, we have a single 5-man unit of Fire Warriors with shield drones. These guys are here basically to just be your backline campers. They're not doing anything particularly special except for grabbing objectives and trying not to die because of that. Then we get to the Pathfinders. I think the Pathfinders are a really cool choice in this list. They do two things. One is that you have this unit of Pathfinders that can screen early on in the game. They are good for deep strike denial and also for screening early on because of their scout move. So they can move pretty fast and make a big difference in the movement of your opponent early on in the game, which is really valuable, especially if you're an army that doesn't want to be charged. So having that in there is worthy on its own. The marker lights that they have, you're really not getting a whole lot of use out of them. Plus, we have plenty in terms of the Cadre Fireblades and Darkstrider already. So having the marker lights here is, again, a secondary benefit, but they're primarily there in order for their screening ability. And if you really need to, they have their carbines, which, thanks to the other part of this unit, can actually do pretty good. So we have a recon drone, we have a pulse accelerator drone, a grav inhibitor drone, and then 2 shield drones, a whopper of a drone unit. So when I look at this drone composition, I think primarily the goal is to get as many drone bodies on the table as possible. Not necessarily shield drones, just drones. We want drones on the table, we want savior protocols, and this unit does that. And this is just a way to get more drone bodies on the table, regardless of what types of drones those are. But there's also some, nuances in that composition that are valuable. Having the recon drone is good because it's a big drone. You can soak more wounds on it, which is, valuable on its own. You can take some hits early on that and not lose your more specialized drones if you don't want to. Then we have the grav inhibitor drone, which again helps you not get charged. That's good, especially if it comes with a drone body and, your goal is to just get more drone bodies. That's a perk. Then we have the pulse accelerator drone, which again is another drone body, but allows your Pathfinders to, shoot an additional 6 inches with their carbines, which is good considering that, you don't have a lot of pulse shots here. So if you need just a few pulse shots to really clean something up, take your carbines, take your volley fire from a Cadre Fireblade, mix it with the pulse accelerator drone, and bada bing, bada boom, you got a pretty good cocktail of pulse shots that you can shoot at something. So that works out fairly well there. And then we have 2 more shield drones. It's a beefy unit of drones that is, multifunctional and still does savior protocols. So having these Pathfinder units is actually again, an important part of the list because it allows you to do screening early on. It provides you with some volume of fire via pulse rounds. And then you have this Swiss Army knife drone unit that can fill multiple roles. And it's pretty nice. Okay, so with the supporting cast discussed, we finally get to our stars of the show, our commanders and our riptides. We don't need to talk extensively about why these things are good because they're commanders and riptides. They are good, but there are choices here that are things that we can only make given everything else we've talked about. So with the riptides in particular, we take a velocity tracker. And I think it's interesting here. Normally I would say take velocity trackers if you are bringing Shadow Sun because they're not going to be moving most likely, right? So why do you need a target lock if you're not moving? Well, in this case, we don't have Shadow Sun. We're probably only calling Kao Yun once, if at all. We might be calling Mon Ka in order to position to reach guys in the back early on, but probably Kao Yun. I don't know. Probably context dependent. But overall, having these riptides with velocity trackers really makes sense given the number of marker lights we have, right? So if we have all of our marker lights and they are hitting the things that we're shooting at our riptides with, which because the whole focus of the army is facilitating riptide and commanders should be the case, then we probably don't need to worry about having a target lock because we have enough marker lights to provide the same benefit. So having the velocity tracker here works because of all the marker light support that we have. And then with the commanders, we have kind of 2 choices that we want to talk about. One is that we're taking Enforcer suits and not just XV8s. In my XV8 video, I talked about how good XV8s were and how that diminished the value of Enforcers. But in this list, Enforcers make a lot of sense because we have so many drones. Having Enforcers with extra wound works because we're not going to be taking wounds on the suit directly. We're going to be taking wounds on all these drones. So having the Enforcer suit works out just fine here. The second thing is having an advanced targeting system over having a 4th cyclic ion blaster. one, this is a cheaper option. You actually are able to fit in everything that you want in the list. So, there's probably some, math that goes into making sure that works and is able to fit. And that's part of why we're taking 3 cyclics and an advanced targeting system instead of 4 cyclics. But also, having those 3 riptides, we have a pretty good, strength 6 shooting base. And really what we want this for is for the flexibility allowed by having strength 8 -2 shot as well, which we can get by overcharging these cyclic ion blasters. So having the advanced targeting system there helps differentiate the cyclic ion blaster from the heavy burst cannon in a stats way that makes it more valuable. So I think in this list, again, because we have the riptides in mass, and because we have all these marker lights that can, of course, help us avoid mortal wounds, having the cyclic ion blasters here, plus the advanced targeting system, instead of just 4 cyclic ion blasters makes sense. It's a more differentiated weapon profile and more valuable because of that. Okay, so overall, I think this is a super cool list. Very tight, very lean, innovative in that way that it doesn't go for a lot of the normal tropes, except for, of course, riptides, commanders, and drones. But that's what we want. That's the juicy stuff, and this list delivers that. So very cool because of that. And it does so in ways that, we're not used to seeing, like having those recon drones, having those bulky Pathfinder units. That's super cool. We don't see those all the time. So kudos to Richard Siegler for making this list work so well and doing so in such an elegant way. It's a tight, cool list, and I love it. I'm very excited about it. Yeah, I think it works. I think, maybe we'll see lists moving towards this direction. But of course, the caveat is that if you're playing in a kill point environment where it's just kill points, this list is going to do quite as well because you're going to lose all those 2-man drone units eventually. And so there's lots of kill points here. But because of the way the Nova format handles kill points, by restricting the total number of points that you can get by that, this works out really well. This is a slow burn list. It's meant to survive and meant to endure until turns 5 and 6. And that's where it's really going to make its mark because you will have your riptides, you will have your commanders left on the board at that time, and your opponent will have spent the whole game burning through those drones. So having this list as it is, I think works really well. Obviously, it worked out great in the Nova environment this year. I'm excited to see what this type of list can do moving forward. And so let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you think of the list? What do you think about how Nova turned out this year? And as always, thanks for watching and happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this channel is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there. Special thanks to Aaron Fox, Jim Bob, Scott Heater, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Tao Oswald, Jackson, Stephen Cohen, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Zealous Brimstone, Evan Wells, and Chris Kessler.